All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had an incredible weekend. Got a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to lead with that bizarre storyline going down in Memphis with Ja Morant being suspended for a game for conduct detrimental to the team. I want to talk some about the numbers that are coming out from this latest campaign from Ja, the disturbing trends from the last 5 years of his career, and kind of what I think it means for the Grizzlies and their future as well as Ja Morant's future. When we're done with that, we're going to be beginning. We didn't do it last week just because we had such a small sample size from every team. But on Mondays, for at least the foreseeable future, we're going to be doing power rankings. So we'll have our top 10 teams in the league ranked in the tail end of the show. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there for more content throughout the year. And last but not least, if you want to get questions into our Friday mailbags, drop them in our full episodes on YouTube in the comments. Just write mailbag with a colon and write your question. That helps me find them when I'm looking through the comments. We'll get to them on Fridays throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So on Friday night, one of the most bizarre Ja Morant games I've ever seen. There was some passing highlights. He had a little sequence in the third quarter where he threw a lob and then a skip pass for a three, and like a couple of sequences where he made some plays. But for the most part, he was kind of just floating through the game. And in the second half, in particular, looked like he was openly pouting. The Lakers were packing the paint on his drives, which that's the game plan from JJ, but we've talked about that throughout the season already. Like, that's what every team's going to do to Memphis because they're a bad jump shooting team. So they're going to pack the paint. They're going to dare Ja Morant to shoot, and he went 0 for 6 from 3 in that game. He's 5 for 32 from 3 to start the season, and it just got ugly, and the Lakers ended up cruising to a victory there, and the body language is bad. The effort was bad. It just looked like a combination of him pouting and him losing some of his confidence to a certain extent as Luka was having another insane game. And then we find out after the game from Shams Charania that Ja Morant's been suspended for a game for conduct detrimental to the team. And it was because Isalo ended up calling him out in front of the team for his lack of effort and leadership, and Ja apparently was disrespectful back to him. And so as I look at this, I've been kind of feeling this way for the better part of a year now. It's just been really hard to really come to this conclusion just because I'm such a big believer in Ja. Like I view that combination of the ability to get into the paint and short range shot making combined with playmaking as like a really strong foundational superstar trait, which is what makes Ja so hard to quit on, as a fan, right? But I think it's time for the Memphis Grizzlies to start thinking about the era after Ja Morant. Like, this has been a 5th consecutive season of him declining across the board in almost every major statistical category. And there's really 2 reasons why I look at this situation with Ja as untenable for Memphis moving forward. On one hand, the consistent year-over-year decline, and then on the other hand, a seeming unwillingness to accept any personal responsibility for it, and a lack of self-awareness over what his role is in his current situation. That's the trouble with what happened Friday night, right? You've got a guy who's clearly blaming the coaching staff for what's happening when there's clear sign that him as an individual basketball player continues to get worse. We've talked a lot about the jump shooting, and it hasn't been pretty. Like, he shot 34% from 3 the year he made the All-NBA team in 2022, and hasn't shot over 31% in a single season since then. And again, he's just 5 for 32 to start this year, 16%. But by far the biggest concern has been his ability to get to the rim. It has declined every single year since that 2022 All-NBA campaign. These are numbers per synergy. I looked these numbers up this morning and I was shocked. 2022, the year he makes All-NBA, 9.6 attempts at the rim per game. 2023, 8.8. 2024, 7.1. 2025, 6.8. So far this season, in this part of the campaign, 4.7 attempts at the rim per game. 4.7. That's less than half in the All-NBA campaign in 2022. So, like, above and beyond anything with his jump shot, even his superpower, his ability to get into the paint, is declining year over year. Now, some of that, like, you would expect. It's a poor jump shooting team. And as he gets older, you want him to refine his game into a little less reckless, a little bit more pace, change of pace, a little bit more shot making, right? But the shot making hasn't been there. There hasn't been a commensurate increase in perimeter polish to go with the decrease in his ability to get to the rim. Now, do I think it's going to be 4.7 attempts per game for the rest of his career? No, I do think that is being exacerbated by his kind of pouty behavior and him not really bringing the level of aggression that we know that he's capable of. But there's been a clear decline, and that is why it's so frustrating in the context of his behavior. Like when you blame the coaching staff, when we can all see that you are declining as a basketball player, it reeks of a lack of self-awareness. And it's like, it's one of those things where we saw last season, after Taylor Jenkins was let go towards the tail end of the year, they went away from the drive and kick attack and they gave the ball to Ja constantly. He had his highest usage rate stretch in recent history. He averaged 27 points per game and 7 assists over his final 22 games, and they were a 500 team. So, like, what Taylor Jenkins was trying to do at the beginning of last year, what Isalo is trying to do to start this year, this ball and player movement. Let's play with more pace. Let's try to make life easier for you. All they're doing is their job as the coach, to attempt to make life easier for you on offense so that the team, not you, the team can score the basketball. And we see this across the league. We know that Josh Giddey can spam high pick and roll, but guess what? The Bulls are trying to play fast and they're trying to get the ball moving because that is how they are going to score as a team. The Miami Heat are doing the same thing. We watched Tyler Herro run a million dribble handoffs and pick and rolls, and we couldn't score. So how about we run the ball up the floor and we play with pace and we drive and kick early in possessions and we try to keep everybody involved with ball and player movement. This is what everybody who is smart in the NBA is trying to do right now. And because it's not on Ja Morant's terms and it doesn't involve him just dancing around at the top of the key doing his own thing every single time, he's not happy with it. And it's just frustrating because, like, again, like there's clear indicators that his individual performance is not where it needs to be in order to anchor a team as like this heliocentric, give me the ball every time and get out of my way type of shot creator. You need to be getting to the rim a lot more and making a lot more jump shots if you're going to be that type of player. So, of course, Isalo and all these other coaches around the league are looking at situations when they don't have a Luka Doncic level primary ball handler, when they don't have like a foundationally great offensive player. They're trying to generate a system that can cultivate offensive success for the unit. That's all Isalo is trying to do. And like Josh kicking and screaming during that. And again, like I think there's two different ways to look at this. There's like an in a vacuum conversation to have about Ja as a basketball player, which is what we're having right now. Like he's declining as a basket attacker. He's declining as a 3-point shooter. He's not the kind of guy that you want to be playing heliocentric basketball with. But it's also complicated in the context of this Memphis Grizzlies team, who is not a very good spacing team. They don't shoot the basketball well as a team. I would argue if you were trying to construct an ideal situation for Ja Morant, you want him surrounded with guys who can shoot, because playmaking is a strength of his on offense. Short range shot making, if he can get to the basket, is a strength of his. But if he can't get there, then it's going to become an emphasis on his jump shooting. And so if you can't space the floor, he's going to have to settle for jump shots and he's going to miss them. So there's also like a team specific conversation around the Grizzlies where, like, even if you believe in Ja still, it's just not a good fit. So I'm looking at this as a situation where it's a sinking ship, so to speak, with Ja, but it's also uniquely poorly situated in Memphis for him there. So like I'm such a big believer in Ja Morant that like if there was any sign of it trending upwards, I'd still be in for Memphis. But it's the opposite. He's trending in the wrong direction and it's a bad fit and now he's pouting. So it's time for the Grizzlies to move on. So again, now looking at it in a basketball context, this is where it gets complicated. Because of the lack of self-awareness, because of the inability to accept personal responsibility and some of the attitude issues that Ja Morant's had over the years, it makes it complicated. Like, for instance, I kept thinking, what about Boston? Boston has a couple of large salaries that they can move. Boston kind of could benefit from some real dribble penetration, like a guy who can really beat people off the dribble and play make. Boston is a team that can space the floor for him. But is Boston's upper management going to look at Ja Morant and his attitude and be like, yeah, let's bring this guy into our system and potentially risk the basketball culture that we've been building for so many years? So it's tough because like I want to see Ja go to a strong basketball culture that can space the floor for him, but he's making himself undesirable for that very type of team with some of his behavior. So like on the one hand, it feels like it's kind of time to move on for Memphis, but it's going to be a lot harder to move on than people think. And overall, I just think the situation is sad. It's sad because Ja Morant had, like, how many players in the NBA truly have a foundational superstar trait? Not many. There might be a dozen in the entire league. Ja did. Ja had it. He could beat everybody off the dribble. He had the short range shot making, and he could pass when he got to the middle of the floor. And because of the lack of skill refinement behind the scenes, like he's just not putting in the work to become the jump shooter that he needs to be. And he's declining in all these other areas. It just is starting to look like a story that doesn't have the happy ending that we were all hoping for when Ja kind of took the league by storm in 2022. He was second team All NBA. Definitively a top 10 player in the NBA in that season. And it's just been all downhill since then. It's just really sad. And I wish it had a happier ending, but to me, it's trending in the wrong direction. All right, let's get into our power rankings. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The NBA season is heating up, college basketball is back, and every night is a shot to score a major bucket on Hard Rock Bet, your home for hoops action all season long. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're looking for an edge before you lock in, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now, get the edge, and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. To be clear, this is not the same as our contender rankings. This is a list intended to call attention to the teams that are playing well in the regular season. So we will periodically approach our contender rankings, probably once a month or so, whenever I see somebody that I need to move up or down for one reason or another. But that kind of change is going to be slow because I'm not going to overreact to a week of regular season basketball when it comes to contender rankings. We will touch base on that periodically. You'll know because I'll call it contender rankings when we get to that point. But on Mondays, we're going to be doing power rankings. It's intended to call attention strictly to who's playing well in the regular season. Now, right now, we're looking at the whole season because we only have a week and a half's worth. But as we get further along, we'll be also adding special emphasis on recent weeks. So let's pretend we're halfway through the season and there's a team that's 20-25, but they've won 7 out of 8 over a 2-week span and they're starting to encroach on the play-in or something like that. We might give them a spot towards the bottom of the power rankings as an opportunity to give them a shout out. This is very much who's playing the best as of late. Okay? We're going to start with number 10 and work our way up. Number 10, the Houston Rockets. 3 straight wins after their 2 heartbreaking losses to start the year. A Shai Gilgeous-Alexander jump shot over Amen Thompson on the left wing, and then a wide open 3 from Jabari Smith on the left wing from being 5-0. That's the slim margin that they've been dealing with to start this season. They've been the number 1 offense in the league. Shocking. They've also been shooting the shit out of the basketball, which has been a unusual trend from them given what we thought about this team on paper. They're number 12 in defense and number 2 in net rating. Number 1 in rebounding, fueled by the fact that they've grabbed a preposterous 42% of their own misses this season. That is one of the crazier stats that I've ever seen. They're really starting to find a groove. On offense, the thing that has stood out to me is just how excellent their top 3 shot creators are. Like Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun, and Amen Thompson are just so good individually that it makes their offense flow, even though they don't have as much refined offensive skill as the team as you would think. And again, as I mentioned earlier, they've been shooting the shit out of the ball to start the season. They are shooting 54% on unguarded catch and shoot threes to start the season. Last night, or I guess it was 2 nights ago in the win against Boston, they Amen Thompson, Josh Okogie, and Tari Eason, those 3 were 8 for 12 from 3. So like, there's a lot of like when those guys are shooting, they're just going to win games. I don't think they're going to, obviously they're not going to shoot 54% on unguarded catch and shoot threes this year, but they may not be quite as bad as we thought they were going to be. Something to keep an eye on. The start of the Celtics game is actually a classic example of what I'm talking about with their top tier shot creators. Kevin Durant, first play of the game, gets a little screening action, drop coverage look, nails a little 18-footer easily off the dribble. Very next possession, Amen Thompson just toasts his man, Josh Minot, off the dribble, dunks it with 2 hands. And then Alperen Sengun takes Neemias Queta right under the basket and bullies him for a layup. Like bang, bang, bang to start the game. You can't guard Kevin Durant, can't guard Amen Thompson, you can't guard Alperen Sengun. And like that's really the foundation of their offense to start the year is they just have 3 dudes that are massive matchup problems all over the floor. And when they shoot as well as they did in that Celtics game, they're just going to be really hard to beat. It hasn't been perfect. As good as they've been on the offensive glass, they've been a mediocre defensive rebounding team. And they haven't been as good on defense as you would expect them to be. As in both cases, I actually attribute it to speed. They can get beat to loose balls by smaller, quicker teams, and they can give up some dribble penetration. But I thought the Boston game was actually a good step forward for them on defense. And Reed Shepherd, who had a rough start to the season, had his best game of the season in Boston. Houston is trending in the right direction, and they've looked downright scary over their last 3 games. Number 9, the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham is off to a rough start on offense to start the season. He's been better at the rim than he was last year. Last year, he was below 50% on layups. He's been in the high 50s at the rim to start the season, so that's a plus. But his jump shot's been off from basically every range, including short range, which is strange. But that didn't stop the Dallas Mavericks in Mexico City from doubling and blitzing Cade all over the floor. And presumably because of the injuries to their center rotation and how they just didn't trust their rim protection. But Cade picked them apart, just making great reads every single time. Jalen Duren was an absolute monster in that game, cleaning up everything at the rim. I haven't loved everything I've seen from Detroit this season. Like they haven't been attacking in transition as much as I would, as they used to. Last year, they were 5th in transition points per game. This year, they're 18th. I think they're missing guys like Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. that ran the floor really well for threes, and Cade was hunting those dudes all the time with kick-aheads. I think that's something they're missing a little bit. I think in general, they haven't been pushing as much as they could. And then their secondary ball handling has been a disaster. Like Karis LeVert has not been great to start the season, and then they fall off a cliff from there. Obviously, you want to see Jaden Ivey come back at some point. And obviously, you would have hoped to have seen more scoring polish from Cade. But overall, the reason why I'm still pretty high on Detroit is they just have a really strong physical foundation. They are this ass-kicking physical team on the margins. They're 7th in defensive rating. They're 8th in rebounding. They're 4th in opponents' points in the paint allowed per game. I was really impressed in the win against Houston, how good of a job they did against Sengun and all of his bully ball attacks. That's a guy who bullies everyone. They're tied for 6th in opponent transition points per game. So they just have such a strong foundation night to night on the margins because they're so athletic and physical and they play super hard that it's allowed them to be 4-2 despite getting a mediocre start on offense. And they will get better there. Cade will hit shots. LeVert will play better than he has. Asar Thompson will be better on offense than he has been. Jaden Ivey will eventually return. And who knows, they may even make a trade at some point. So all things considered, being at 4-2, I think that's a solid start for the Pistons. Number 8, the Denver Nuggets. Kind of a weird start for Denver. They've toasted off 2 games in crunch time to the Warriors and Blazers. Otherwise, they'd be undefeated. The Steph game, he literally had 13 straight points and hit a contested 38-footer to send the game to overtime. So I don't know what you're going to do about that. But the Portland game was just mental lapses. There was a and one that Denny Avdia got spinning off of Cam Johnson, where the Nuggets did not have their help side defense set up, and they were not sagging off some of the non-shooters that they should have been, and they ended up giving up an and one when they should have contained the ball better. Jeremy Grant beat everyone up the floor in transition to draw a foul, just bad transition defense. And then Aaron Gordon, for the game winner, gets his hand caught in the cookie jar against Jeremy Grant and just gives him an easy trip to the foul line to win the game. So just some mental lapses, highly unusual for a team in Denver that's known as being one of the best late game execution teams in the league. They have a 167 defensive rating so far in 13 minutes of clutch basketball. And that's usually a good clutch defense. They've been strong in the metrics on defense in clutch time over the course of the last few years. The Blazers game was also the first time this season that they got smashed with Jokic off the floor, and it cost them a game. I think they were minus 11 in the minutes when Jokic was off the floor in that game. But other than that, things have been pretty encouraging for Denver. The offense looks incredible, and that's with them not even getting Cam Johnson into rhythm yet. They're 3rd in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating, 3rd in net rating, 4th in rebounding. So lots of strong metrics for them across the board. All of their big 3 look great. Jamal Murray's in the best early season shape that he's ever been in. Aaron Gordon looks fantastic. Obviously, Jokic looks great. They just need to get Cam Johnson a little bit more involved and clean up their late game execution. Number 7, the Portland Trailblazers. 5th best defense in the league in the early going, and boy, was it on display late in the game against Denver. Tamani Kamara had a really impressive help side block against Cam Johnson at the rim, sent him flying out of bounds. Shaedon Sharpe on this jump ball sequence at the tail end of the game came flying in and blocked an Aaron Gordon turnaround jump shot. They are just so big and so strong and athletic on the perimeter, and they have rim protection to back it up. And all their forwards are so big, strong, and athletic that they can even go small. They ended up going without a center down the tail end of the Denver Nuggets game, which is like kind of crazy to think about it against that particular team, but they're just swarming. And then on offense, like I talked about before the season, I thought the tape from Denny Avdia at the end of last season was legit. Like I didn't think it was just a guy putting up numbers. He looked like the classic big versatile ball handler that can hit a pull-up jump shot, that can get a guy trapped on his hip off of ball screens and kind of methodically work into the middle of the floor. He had a lot of like pump fake, step through type of like kind of nifty footwork around the basket to get by rim protection for easy layups and short shots that he can make. But at the same time, he's like brings like a real downhill, like slashing force to the table. And I think he's a pretty underrated passer. And so I was encouraged, and I actually said in our season preview that I expected Denny Avdia to come out and put up big numbers to start the year. And he's looked fantastic. After a rough first game where his jumper looked kind of hitchy and off, over his last 5 games where the Blazers are 4-1, Denny Avdia is averaging 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists on 51% from the field and 47% from 3. Drew Holiday has been great over the last few games. He's poured in 21, 5, and 9 over the last 4 games. Jeremy Grant's been great, surprisingly, to start the season. And they're a devastating transition team. They're scoring 34 transition points per game. There have been 3 teams that have really stood out to me as like transition attack teams, and Portland's been one. It's like Miami, Portland, and Chicago. Those 3 teams have been like chaotically fast with the way that they're playing. And Portland's been one of those teams. They have 34 transition points per game, which ranks 2nd in the NBA. They get stops and they run it down your throat. Then they pick you up full court and they force the most turnovers in the league with their ball pressure. And then they run it back down your throat again. They're going to be a pain in the ass for every team in the league to play against. The Lakers get them tonight on the tail end of back-to-back. I'll have my eye on that game. And I'm worried about it for the Lakers because they can struggle with ball pressure a little bit. Portland is a pain. They're going to be a team that everyone's going to have to deal with this season, and it won't be easy. Number 6, the Milwaukee Bucks. Really bad night on defense against the Sacramento Kings. Kind of a letdown game for them after upsetting the Warriors without Giannis. but I've been very impressed by the Bucks in the early going this season. Miles Turner has added this like other layer of athleticism to the front court, and then they're playing the right guys in their backcourt. And when you sub out guys like Taurean Prince and Damian Lillard from that starting lineup, like really that to me is the biggest change in the team, is just how physically imposing they are. Think about last year when we were seeing a lot of like Dame, Gary Trent, Taurean Prince, Giannis, Brook. And you turn Brook into Miles, who's a much better athlete. You turn Taurean into AJ Green, who is a quicker, better perimeter defender. And then you turn Damian Lillard into Ryan Rollins, who is a big, athletic guy that can play both ends of the floor. All of a sudden, it goes from being kind of like a slow Bucks team to like a pretty big and athletic Bucks team. And so that's allowed them to have a better defensive ceiling. It hasn't been super great in the metrics. They're 18th in defensive rating, but they've had really good stretches of defense. And that number's pretty strongly influenced by them giving up like 135 points to the Sacramento Kings. But overall, they've been much more physically imposing on defense, and they've added this like very basic construct on offense that works. This has been the fourth best offense in the league here in the early going, and it's very simply rim pressure and playmaking mixed with jump shooting, right? Bringing in a guy like Cole Anthony, who can beat people off the dribble and make kick out passes. Ryan Rollins, who's been excellent at the rim and excellent making the reads and pick and roll. And then Giannis, who's been playing at an MVP level. You have those three dudes surrounded by a big dude in Miles Turner who can shoot, and lots of jump shooting talent around them on the perimeter. It just works. It is classic rim pressure balanced with catch and shoot shooting that is making it successful on the offensive end of the floor. They're, again, fourth in offense, 18th in defense, seventh in net rating, way more physical than I expected them to be. They got a young guy to pop in Ryan Rollins, who had a couple of massive games last week. Again, it started with me early in the season just thinking Ryan had like really good natural give and take with Giannis, but now he's starting to add the pull-up jump shot to the mix. He's hitting that at a high clip. He's hit more pull-up threes to start this season than he did in the entirety of last season in a Bucks jersey. Really, really nice pop from there. And then they just in general look like a more serious threat in the Eastern Conference than I originally thought. I had them at the top team in my third tier of contenders to start the season. They're looking more like a second tier contender to me. Obviously too early to make some sort of substantial change. We'll talk about that when we do our next contender rankings over the course of the next couple of weeks, but I'm looking at them as much more of a second tier contender at this point. Number 5, the Los Angeles Lakers. One of the more impressive starts in the league when you consider the injuries they've dealt with and their strength of schedule. They've played the third toughest schedule in the league to start the season, with quality wins against Minnesota twice and against the Miami Heat last night, a big test for their offense. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Luka's only played in 4 of their 7 games. LeBron has missed all 7 of their games. Marcus Smart, Gabe Vincent, and DeAndre Ayton have all missed time. Lots of guys in and out of the lineup, and they just keep winning. And they're winning primarily as a product of them being the second best half-court offense in the league to start the season. I expected the Lakers to be an excellent offense this year when healthy, but if you would have told me they'd be the second best offense, half-court offense in the league with the injuries that they've had, I would have been blown away. And it's really just because of how incredible Austin and Luka have been. Out of the 41 players in the NBA that have ran at least 50 pick and rolls to start this season, they are 3rd and 4th in that list, respectively, in their efficiency on those actions. Both players getting over a 125 offensive rating when you include passes on their pick and rolls. They're averaging a combined 72 points per game between the two of them, and they just have tons of play finishing talent off of that. They're top 5 in scoring off of cuts. They're shooting 41% on catch and shoot threes. Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart have both been revelations on offense as connective offensive players. Jake hitting catch and shoot threes and running the floor in transition. And as a cutter, Marcus Smart more as like a connective playmaker, just kind of playing off an advantage. He can also score off the bounce every once in a while. They've been getting quality play on the roll. Like DeAndre Ayton has been scoring on the roll. I think Jackson Hayes has been really good over the course of the last few games, bringing vertical spacing, but also, especially in the Memphis game, he was picking them apart with his short roll passing, making really good reads in the middle of the floor to start those 4-on-3s. The Miami Heat game in particular was a good challenge for the Lakers because you knew they weren't going to run any drop coverage. It was going to be a steady diet of switching and doubling and zone. And you saw it affected Luka and Austin individually. They were 18 for 44 from the field, but they still got to 55 points between the two of them. And the team logged a 122 offensive rating against that Spurs team, which is the third best the Heat team, that it was the third best defense in the NBA coming into today. So really impressed by the Lakers on offense to start the year. They've been a little better on defense to start the season than I expected. They were 17th in defensive rating at this point, also 17th in defensive rebounding. They have some smart defenders who are usually in the right spot. It's amazing how often the ball will just like end up with Marcus Smart or Jake LaRavia because they're just always positioned properly on defense. The defensive rebounding piece and overall the defense, I think, is something that LeBron can be a great help with. So, given how they looked in training camp and on opening night, the Lakers have completely flipped the script over the last 6 games. And with LeBron coming here in the next week or two, I'm really excited to see what they can accomplish on the margins, which has been really their only weak spot at this point. Number 4, the Philadelphia 76ers. The second best offense in the entire NBA. Fueled by their incredibly fast and talented backcourt, they've scored the 6th most transition points in the NBA to start the year, all of that speed on display. In the half court, they're 7th in offensive rating, fueled primarily by the shot creation of Tyrese Maxey, but also all the shooting and slashing around them. So Tyrese has been amazing. 34 points per game, 9 assists per game, 63% true shooting. He's shooting 50% on pull-up threes, 58% on floaters. Really impressive playmaking off of his rim pressure. That dynamic is really the floater pull-up three is really the dynamic he's torching everybody with. If you overplay the drive, it's a pullback dribble or a step back. He gets tons of separation and he's nailing that at 50%. And then if he gets his shoulder past you, he just takes off at full speed and just softly puts that floater up and hits it. And if you react to him at all on the drive, he's making the appropriate kick out reads. And then as a team, they're 10th in catch and shoot efficiency, but they're 5th in spot up efficiency. And a lot of this has to do with the slashing. It's not just, again, like when you're open, it's not just knocking down a catch and shoot three. If you can drive that closeout and get layups and dunks, like VJ Edgecombe and Kelly Oubre both are slashing closeouts extremely well, getting layups and easy shots at the rim. And then the pressure just never stops. Like Embiid, strangely enough, even though he's been kind of waddling around and looking unathletic, he's at 17 points per game on 59% true shooting. He's looking a little more mobile each game, which is something to be excited about if you're a Sixers fan, because his immobility has been part of the reason why they've been bad with him on the floor relative to when he's been off the floor to start the season. But Embiid should be able to, if he's trending like this, maybe he'll never be the MVP again. That if he can trend to the point where he's at least a little bit more impactful defensively on the defensive glass and in transition defensively, if he can keep up a little bit and he keeps scoring the ball this efficiently, I think that's going to add an element to this. Paul George, obviously, everyone talks about how, the Sixers need to stick with their young guys. I don't necessarily disagree, but like Paul George can do a lot of things on the basketball court. I don't think adding him to the rotation is going to hurt things in any real way. And then you get this consistent pressure, right? Like you're seeing Quentin Grimes come in and he's playing really well. The lineups where he's on the floor are performing really well. VJ Edgecombe is having these little spurts of shot creation. They're just really deep with athletic shot creation talent. And they've got these older guys that, like, if any of them pop at any point this season, they're going to be even more dynamic. Tyrese Maxey's looking like a first-team All-NBA guy to start the season. They're just much better than I thought they would be at this point. Number 3, the San Antonio Spurs. Finally dropped a game against the Phoenix Suns last night. Super ugly night from Victor Wembanyama. The Suns were double-teaming him all over the floor, and he just didn't handle it well. I do think that was the ugliest version of what this will look like this season. Because on the one hand, you got to be realistic. Like, this is a poor jump shooting team, San Antonio. Teams are going to double team Wemby. They're not going to let him cook one-on-one. This is a coverage you're going to see a lot. And so there will be some weaknesses that will come to the forefront as a virtue of this coverage throughout the season. But that one last night was so exceptionally bad. Like Wemby almost looked like a rookie with the way that he was just struggling with physicality and ball pressure, getting his base dislodged, having the ball swiped away from him all over the place. His kick out passes against the doubles were bad. Like some of it was Wemby just had a really bad game. And that's going to happen with younger basketball players. Like, and that's part of why, like I talked about, when we start having the conversation about Wemby with the best player in the world, I certainly think that Wemby has a great chance to become that at some point in the next few years. But one of the biggest things that younger players can struggle with is they can have a night like this where they're not just bad, but they're like really, really bad. And so these are the kinds of little details that are just standing in the way between where Wemby is now as like towards the bottom of the top tier of superstars and the legitimate best player in the world. There's a consistency piece. There's a, can you do it against every single coverage? Can you do it in the postseason when teams are scouting for you and dealing with you for 2 straight weeks? Like there are checkpoints, and Wemby's hit every checkpoint so far, but there are still checkpoints he has to hit in the future in order to actually get to that point where he's the best player in the world. And part of that is like when teams get super physical and double team you and sag off of shooters, are you going to have, so what was it that he had last night? Like 8 points and 6 turnovers, right? Like if you're going to have really, really rough games where you decompose like that, that's part of that growth process, him kind of trimming the fat there. Overall, though, in that Suns game, I thought the biggest issue was they didn't get any stops. And again, like if you look at this Spurs team in the aggregate, the thing that I've been most excited about them with the early part of the season is like Julian Champagne's this big, scrappy perimeter player. Steph Castle's big and scrappy. Dylan Harper's big and scrappy. Like Keldon Johnson's big and scrappy. They're big and scrappy. And they have Victor Wembanyama anchoring it all. And so this is very much a defense to rebound to run type of team. Defense, rebound, run. Like even when they were undefeated, they were a mediocre half-court offense that struggled against zone defense, right? So like a big thing for them is going to be on nights like this where they don't get stops, it's going to be really hard for them to overcome it because they were never that great of a half-court team to begin with. We'll see how much De'Aaron Fox helps with that in the big picture. But I thought the bigger story in that Suns game was they weren't getting out in transition because they weren't getting enough stops. So far to start the season, 9th in offense, 2nd in defense, 4th in net rating, way more physically imposing as a team than I expected them to be, which I think gives them a strong foundation to build night to night in the regular season. But last night you got to see a little bit, an exaggerated version of what it will look like when teams try to take the ball out of Victor Wembanyama's hands. Number 2, the Chicago Bulls, who finally dropped a game last night in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks offense was just in a really good groove all night. And the Bulls had a particularly rough third quarter where they lost control of the game. But they've been one of those 3 teams that I mentioned, the Bulls, the Heat, and the Blazers. They've been one of several teams in the NBA that have really embraced transition basketball to start this year. And it's been working wonders for them. As a matter of fact, they've been the best transition offense to start the season. And then when they get into the half court, it's very simple. They don't overly complicate things. It's a steady diet of Josh Giddey pick and roll or pick and pop with Vooch, and then post-ups for Vucevic. It's a lot of 2-man game with Giddey and Vooch. They initiate things, and then they just play drive and kick off of it. And they've got a lot of guys that attack the rim with a ton of force. Modest Buzelis has been a dominant force attacking the basket as a cutter, as a slasher, and as a transition weapon. They are playing off that advantage, and they are attacking the rim very well. And then on the defensive end of the floor, it's been kind of like a weird inverse of the Boston Celtics, where they are giving up a million paint points, but they're defending the 3-point line very well. And that has been a good, strong foundation for them on the defensive end, which is triggering that transition attack. Very, very impressive start for the Chicago Bulls. Josh Giddey in particular has been fantastic. I talked a lot this summer about how I didn't think he was good enough to be like the lead shot creator on a dead serious team. It's still very early, but he's been better than I expected to start the season. And if that kind of thing gets maintained, it becomes more like, holy shit, you're getting that for $25 million. Now we're having a different conversation, right? He's been better than I expected to start the year. Number 1, the only undefeated team in the NBA, the 7-0 Oklahoma City Thunder. 7th in offense, 1st in defense, 1st in net rating. Hit a timely stretch of easy schedule last week with Chet Holmgren being out with some back issues and J-Dub obviously out. Getting Isaiah Joe back has been key, giving them some more offensive pop. I I've been generally super impressed with the job of Isaiah Joe, AJ Mitchell, and Aaron Wiggins kind of providing the offensive support that they've needed with Chet and J-Dub both being out. Shai has done a great job with his game management. I thought he was exceptionally good in the early part of the season when they were playing those tougher games, pulling out losses from the jaws of defeat with incredible shot making and incredible playmaking. Lou Dort has been an absolute menace on defense to start the season. I think 70 wins is legitimately on the table for this group. They have a much tougher schedule on the perimeter. This week, they go on the road to the Clippers and onto the Trailblazers before I think they're in Memphis and Sacramento. Memphis and Sacramento, those should be wins, but Portland and the Clippers, those are going to be a couple of tough challenges for them on the road. If they come out of that 11-0, that would be an unbelievable start to the season given some of the injuries that they have dealt with. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning with some game reactions. I will see you guys then.